Amara. She's at home, probably struggling to squeeze into something that doesn't scream mom bod. Marcus sneered, his voice dripping with disdain. The rising finance executive stood among colleagues, his arm slung around Vanessa, a shimmering blonde mistress, whose giggle cut through the Waldorf Astoria's glittering ballroom. Chandeliers cast golden light. Champagneflutes klingelkill, and laughter followed Marcus's cruel jab about his wife, until a hush would soon swallow it all. What happens when the woman he mocked steps into the spotlight? Her presence, commanding every eye. Will her secret unravel his world? I'm thrilled you're here for this tale of betrayal and triumph. Hit that subscribe button and share in the comments where and when you're listening. Morning coffee or late night vibes? What's your guess for how this unfolds? Will Amara crumble or rise? Stay with me to uncover the shocking truth that left a Gala speechless, and see if your prediction holds. Marcus Reynolds leaned against the polished bar, his navy suit crisp, his blue eyes glinting with the kind of smugness that thrived in rooms like this. The Waldorf Astoria's ballroom pulsed with life, jazz notes curling through the air, champagne flutes catching the chandelier's glow. His arm rested casually around Vanessa Carter, her blonde hair cascading over a sequin dress that clung like a second skin. She laughed too loudly at his quips, her green eyes darting to ensure every colleague noticed her place at his side. The table around them buzzed with finance executives, their tailored tuxedos and practiced smiles, a testament to New York's elite. Marcus was in his element, the center of their orbit, and he relished it. So Marcus, Derek, Thompson said, swirling his whiskey, his dark skin catching the soft light. Where's Amara tonight? She used to steal the show at these galas. His tone was casual, almost teasing, but it carried a hint of genuine curiosity. Derek had always liked Amara, her warmth, a contrast to the room's calculated charm. Marcus's lips curled into a smirk, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial drawl. Amara, she's at home, probably wrestling with Stretch, Marks, and a fridge full of leftovers. He paused, letting the words sink in, his gaze sweeping the table for reactions. Since the twins, she's ballooned, fat, frumpy, and frankly, an embarrassment to bring to a place like this. The words were sharp, each one a dart aimed at an absent target. Vanessa's giggle pierced the air, high and performative, her manicured nails grazing his arm as if to applaud his cruelty. The table erupted in laughter, a chorus of sycophantic chuckles. Derek's smile faltered, his laugh more reflex than conviction. But it didn't push back. Another colleague, a wiry man named Greg, leaned forward, his tie slightly askew. Come on, Marcus. She can't be that bad. Amara always had style. His words were half-hearted, a weak attempt to steer the conversation, but Marcus seized the opening. Style. Marcus scoffed, raising his glass, as if toasting his own wit. You should see her now, lumbering around in sweatpants, barely able to zip up a dress. I told her to stay home tonight. Who'd want to be seen with that at a gala? He tilted his head toward Vanessa, who pined under the implication, her lips parting in a smug smile. The table laughed again, louder this time. Their amusement, a toxic cloud that fed Marcus's ego. He thrived on it. The way their approval crowned him king of this moment. Vanessa leaned closer, her voice a syrupy pure. You're so right. Marcus, this is your night. You need someone who can keep up. Her words were a calculated jab, her eyes flicking to the others for validation. Greg shifted uncomfortably, sipping his drink, while a woman in a sapphire gown, another colleague named Rachel, forced a laugh that didn't reach her eyes. The group's dynamic was clear. Marcus led and they followed, even if some hesitated at the edge of his cruelty. Marcus' chest swelled, his confidence of palpable force. He glanced across the ballroom where Dr. Harold Evans, the gala's host, stood in a circle of philanthropists. Evans was a legend, a black man whose influence spanned continents. His graying hair and tailored tuxedo exuding quiet power. Marcus had angled for his attention for months, dreaming of a partnership that could skyrocket his career. Tonight, he felt untouchable. His mockery of Amara just another flex of his dominance. But beneath the laughter, a supple tension simmered. Derek's fingers tightened around his glass, his jaw clenching briefly before he masked it with a sip. Rachel's gaze darted to the ballroom doors as if sensing a shift in the air. The jazz band struck a softer note, and for a fleeting moment, the room seemed to hold its breath. Marcus, oblivious, raised his glass again, ready to launch another barb. You know, I told Amara she could come if she found something that didn't make her look like the words caught in his throat. A murmur rippled through the crowd, heads turning toward the grand double doors. Marcus's smirk faltered, his hand pausing mid-gesture. Vanessa's giggle died, her eyes narrowing as she followed the room's gaze. Derek straightened, his expression unreadable, while Greg and Rachel exchanged a glance, their discomfort morphing into curiosity. The ballroom's energy shifted, a tide pulling towards something or someone about to change. Everything. Marcus' pulse quickened, though he didn't know why. He tightened his grip on Vanessa, his other hand clenching his glass. The door stood ajar, a silhouette framed against the golden light beyond. The jazz notes faded, and the crowd's whispers grew, a collective intake of breath. Whoever was coming, they carried a presence that demanded attention. And in that moment, Marcus felt the first crack in his carefully constructed world. A tremor that promised to shatter the throne he'd built on his wife's humiliation. Amar Johnson sat alone in the dim glow of her Upper West Side apartment. The soft hum of the baby monitor her only company. The twins slept upstairs, their tiny breaths a fragile anchor in the storm of her thoughts. She faced the mirror, her mahogany skin catching the lamplight, her dark eyes tracing the curves she'd once celebrated. Now, those curves felt like a betrayal. Each one, a canvas for Marcus's venom. You're not the woman I married. He'd spat, his blue eyes cold, as he tossed her a pair of sweatpants. Can't you at least try to look decent? The words echoed, sharp and unrelenting, carving deeper into the confidence she'd fought to hold. She ran a hand through her natural curls, pinned loosely inside, before the twins, before Marcus's jabs. Amara had been a force, organizing community drives, speaking at rallies. Her voice, a beacon for change. Now she was a shadow, her days filled with diaper changes and dishes, her nights haunted by his disdain. Yet beneath the pain, a secret burned. Amara was the anonymous founder of Empower Ed, a global nonprofit that had built schools from Nairobi to rural Mississippi. She'd hidden it from Marcus, fearing her wealth and influence would taint his love. She'd wanted him to see her, not the empire she'd quietly forged. Her phone buzzed on the vanity, Claire's name lighting the screen. Amara hesitated, then opened the text. You're more than his punching bag. Mara, get to that gala. Show them who you are. Claire's words fierce and unyielding, struck a chord. Amara's best friend, a lawyer with a razor-sharp mind, had watched Marcus's cruelty erode her spirit. Last month, over coffee, Claire had gripped of her hand, eyes blazing. "You're Amara Johnson, not some doormat. Don't let him define you." Amara had nodded, but doubt lingered. Could she face him? Face them after everything? She stood, her bare feet sinking into the plush rug, and crossed to the closet. The apartment, modern, but cluttered with toys and sippy cups, felt like a cage. She pushed aside Marcus's tailored suits, her fingers brushing a hidden garment bag. Inside was a crimson gown, custom-made before the twins, its silk untouched for years. She unzipped it, the fabric shimmering like a promise. Her heart raced. Could she do this? Could she step into a room that would judge her every curve, her every breath? A memory surfaced, unbidden. 2 years ago, at another gala, Marcus had twirled her across the dance floor, his smile warm, his hands steady on her waist. "You're my everything," he'd whispered, his fair skin flushed with pride. But that Marcus was gone, replaced by a man who mocked her body, her worth, his affair with Vanessa in open secret. Last night, he'd smirked as he left for the gala. "Stay home. Amara, you'd only embarrass me." The sting of it lingered, but Claire's text burned brighter. She slipped into the gown, the silk cool against her skin. It hugged her curves, not hiding them, but celebrating them, each seam a defiance of Marcus's scorn. In the mirror, a woman stared back, not the frumpy housewife he'd painted, but a queen reclaiming her throne. Her curls framed her face, her eyes fierce with a fire she'd buried too long. She applied makeup with trembling hands, each stroke a step toward courage. Winged eyeliner, a bold red lip to match the dress. Another text from Claire. "You're a damn legend. Don't forget it." Amara smiled, a flicker of her old self breaking through. She thought of empowered, of the children whose lives she changed, their letters of thanks tucked in her desk. Marcus didn't know that Amara, the one who'd negotiated with world leaders, who'd cried tears of joy at school openings, he saw only his own narrative, one where she was small, unworthy. She glanced at the baby monitor, the twins. Soft snores, grounding her. They were her. Why? Her strength. She couldn't let them grow up, seeing their mother diminished. She grabbed her clutch, to her heels clicking on the hardwood. The decision was made, but fear gnawed at her. What if Marcus laughed? What if the room did? She pushed the thought aside, channeling Claire's fire, her own resolve. The gala was her battlefield, and she'd face it head on. As she called a car, her phone buzzed again. A news alert about Dr. Harold Evans, the gala's host, praising Empower Ed's impact. Amara's breath caught. Evans, her mentor, had always known her secret, guiding her from afar. Tonight he'd be there, a silent ally. She stepped into the elevator, the crimson gown, a beacon in the dim light. The city waited below, its pulse matching her own. Marcus, he thought he'd buried her, but he was wrong. Amara Johnson was rising, and the Waldorf Astoria would bear witness to her fire. The jazz band's notes hung in the air, a delicate pause that seemed to hold the Waldorf Astoria's ballroom in the suspense. Marcus stood frozen, his glass half raised, Vanessa's arm still looped through his. Her giggle cut short. The crowd's murmur swelled, a tide of whispers, pulling every eye toward the grand double doors. Amara Johnson stepped through them, and the room exhaled. As one, her crimson gown clung to her curves like a lover's embrace, each seam celebrating the body Marcus had dared to mock. Her natural curls cascaded, a crown of defiance. Her mahogany skin glowing under the chandelier's golden light. Her dark eyes, fierce and unyielding, swept the room, commanding silence without a word. Marcus' smirk vanished, his fair skin flushing a blotchy red. "Amara," he muttered. The word, a choked gasp, barely audible over the crowd's rustle. His blue eyes widened, disbelief warring, with a flicker of something darker. Fear, perhaps, or the dawning of his own miscalculation. Vanessa's grip tightened on his arm, her green eyes narrowing, but Amara's presence dwarfed her. A supernova in a room of flickering stars. Derek leaned forward, his whiskey forgotten, his jaw slack. "Is that her?" He whispered to Rachel, who nodded, her sapphire gown catching the light as she stared, transfixed. Amara's heels clicked on the marble floor, each step a deliberate challenge. She moved with the grace of someone who knew her worth, her posture regal, her chin lifted. The crowd parted. Some guests, recognizing her from years past, their murmurs tinged with awe. "That's Amara Johnson." A woman in pearls whispered, "She's stunning." A man in a tuxedo nodded, his gaze lingering. The elite, so quick to judge, now bowed to her unspoken authority. Amara felt their eyes, a weight she'd once feared, but tonight she wielded it like a blade. Marcus shook off his shock, his jaw clenching as he stormed toward her, weaving through the crowd. His tailored suit, once a symbol of control, now seemed ill-fitting, his shoulders tense with fury. "What the hell are you doing here?" he hissed, grabbing her wrist, his fingers digging into her skin. "I told you to stay home." His voice was low, meant to intimidate, but it cracked, betraying his unraveling composure. Amara's gaze met his steady and unflinching, her silence. A wall he couldn't breach. She let him pull her toward his table, her crimson gown trailing like a banner of defiance, drawing every eye in their wake. The crowd's whispers grew, a chorus of curiosity and judgment. A woman in a velvet dress leaned toward her companion. "Did he just grab her like that?" she murmured, her tone laced with disapproval. A man nearby shook his head, his eyes on Amara's poised figure. "She doesn't look like someone who'd take that," he said softly. The tension rippled, a current that threatened to drown Marcus's carefully curated charm. Vanessa trailed behind, her sequin dress suddenly garish, her confidence wilting under Amara's radiance. At the table, Marcus released Air's wrist, his hand trembling as he faced his colleagues. Derek's discomfort was palpable, his fingers drumming on the table, while Greg avoided Marcus's gaze, sipping his drink. Rachel's eyes flicked between Amra and Marcus, her expression unreadable but sharp. Vanessa hovered, her lips pursed, sensing the shift in the room's allegiance. Amara stood tall, her presence a silent rebuke, her dark eyes locking onto Marcus for a fleeting moment before scanning the table. She said nothing, but her silence roared, a challenge that left Marcus exposed. I think you can just show up like this." Marcus snapped, his voice louder now, drawing glances from nearby tables. "You're making a fool of yourself." Amara, his words were meant to wound, to reassert his dominance, but they fell flat, hollow against her unwavering poise. Vanessa smirked, trying to reclaim her place. She's right. Marcus, this isn't her scene, she said, her voice syrupy but strained, her eyes darting to Amara's gown, her beauty a mirror to Vanessa's inadequacy. Amara's hands trembled slightly, the only sign of the storm within. She felt Marcus's words, each one a familiar blade, but she refused to bleed. Not here. Not now. Claire's text echoed in her mind. You're a damn legend. She thought of her twins, their laughter, her anchor, and of empowered. The secret Marcus couldn't fathom. She stood straighter, her curls catching the light, her silence louder than his rage. The crowd watched, some leaning forward, others whispering, their anticipation of palpable force. The jazz band struck a new chord, and a stagehand moved toward the podium, signaling the host's imminent speech. Amara's gaze flicked to the stage where Dr. Harold Evans would soon speak, her mentor, her ally, the man who knew her truth. Marcus followed her gaze, his brow furrowing, sensing a threat he couldn't name. The room's energy shifted, a tide pulling toward an unseen climax. Amara's heart pounded, but her resolve held. She was no longer the woman Marcus had tried to bury. Tonight, she was fire, and the Gala would feel her burn. Amara stood at the edge of Marcus's table, her crimson gown a defiant blaze against the murmurs rippling through the Waldorf Astoria's ballroom. Marcus's hand hovered where he'd released her wrist, his fingers twitching as if itching to reclaim control. His blue eyes burned, not with the smugness of an hour ago, but with a raw, desperate fury. Vanessa Lingel behind him, her sequin dress catching the light like a fading star, her smirk faltering under the weight of Amara's presence. The colleagues, Derek, Greg, Rachel, sat in uneasy silence, their glasses untouched, their laughter long gone. The crowd's whispers curled around them, a tightening noose of scrutiny that Marcus seemed determined to ignore. You think you can waltz in here and steal the spotlight? Marcus's voice rose sharp and loud, slicing through the jazz. Band's fading notes. You're a joke. Amara, you don't belong here. His words echoed, drawing gasps from nearby tables where guests in velvet and silk leaned closer, their eyes wide with shock and fascination. He stepped toward her, his fair skin flushed, his tailored suit straining against his tense shoulders. Look at you parading around like you're something special. You're nothing but an embarrassment. Vanessa seized the moment, her voice a syrupy taunt. He's right, Marcus. She's out of her league. She tossed her blonde hair, her green eyes glinting with a desperate bid for relevance. But the words landed flat, her confidence crumbling as Amara's dark eyes remained fixed ahead. Unyielding, Derek shifted in his seat, his dark fingers drumming a nervous rhythm on the table, his earlier amusement replaced by a grimace. Marcus, maybe ease up, he muttered, barely audible, his gaze flickering to Amara's poised figure. Amara stood tall, her curls framing her face like a halo, her mahogany skin glowing under the chandelier's scrutiny. Her hands trembled at her sides, a faint ripple in her armor, but her expression was stone, calm, regal, unbreakable. Marcus' words were knives, each one slicing into wounds he'd carved over years. But she refused to bleed. Not here, where every eye watched, where her twins' faces flickered in her mind, urging her to stand firm. Claire's voice echoed, "You're a damn legend." She drew a slow breath, her silence louder than his. Rage, a challenge that stripped him bare. The crowd's discomfort grew palpable, A woman in a velvet dress at a nearby table whispered to her companion, "He's humiliating her in front of everyone." Her tone was sharp, laced with indignation. A man in a tuxedo shook his head, his voice low. "She's holding her own. He's the one looking small." Their words floated to Amara, a quiet lifeline. But Marcus pressed on, oblivious to the shifting tide. I think this dress changes anything." He spat, gesturing at her gown. "You're still the same frumpy housewife who can't keep up. Go home." "Amara, before you make a bigger fool of yourself." Rachel, in her sapphire gown, flinched, her eyes darting to air with something like respect. Greg sipped his drink, his face pale, avoiding Marcus's gaze as if distancing himself from the wreckage. Derek's fingers stilled, his jaw tight, his silence of betrayal of his earlier laughter. Vanessa tried to laugh, a high forced sound, but it died under the crowd's stares. Her role as Marcus's cheerleader unraveling, the ballroom's elite, once charmed by Marcus's charisma, now watched him with narrowed eyes, their judgment a weight he couldn't shake. Amara's heart pounded. Each of Marcus's words a spark threatening to ignite her pain. She saw her twin smiles, felt the weight of Empower Ed's mission, the school she'd built in secret. Marcus didn't know that Amara, the one who'd face down skeptics and change lives, he saw only his own narrative, one where she was weak, unworthy, had trembling hands steadied, her resolve of fire kindled by years of silence. She met his gaze, her dark eyes piercing, and though she said nothing, her presence roared. "You don't define me." The stagehand's movement caught her eye, a subtle signal that the host's speech was near. Dr. Harold Evans, her mentor, would soon take the stage. His presence, a promise of truth. Amara's gaze flicked to him, a fleeting anchor, and Marcus followed her look, his brow furrowing. "What are you staring at?" he snapped, his voice cracking with unease. Sensing a shift he couldn't name, the crowd leaned forward, their whispers a crescendo, some women nodding in solidarity with Amara's quiet strength, others glaring at Marcus's cruelty. The jazz band fell silent, the air thick with anticipation. Amra stood unwavering, her crimson gown a beacon, her silence a weapon. Marcus's chest heaved, his control slipping like sand through his fingers. Vanessa stepped back, her confidence shattered, her role in his world reduced to a footnote. Derek's eyes met Amara's, a flicker of regret in his gaze, while Rachel's lips parted as if to speak, but thought better of it. The ballroom held its breath, the tension, a taut string ready to snap. Amara felt it the moment before. Everything changed. The spark before the blaze. She was ready, and Marcus, blind to her fire, was about to burn. The air in the Waldorf Astoria's ballroom thickened, a charged silence swallowing Marcus's venom as the stage lights flared. Amara stood unwavering, her crimson gown a beacon of defiance, her dark eyes glinting with a fire that Marcus, in his fury, had failed to extinguish. His last taunt, "Go home." Amara hung like a dying echo, drowned by the crowd's expectant hush. Vanessa's forced laugh faded, her sequin dress a dim flicker beside Amara's radiance. Derek's gaze lingered on Amara, guilt shadowing his face, while Rachel and Greg Shotrigid, their unease. A mirror to the elite guests now craning toward the stage. The jazz band's absence left only the pulse of anticipation, a heartbeat shared by all Dr. Harold Evans stepped to the podium, his graying hair catching the spotlight, his tailored tuxedo exuding a quiet authority. His deep voice rolled through the room, warm yet commanding. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we honor a visionary whose anonymous donations have transformed lives across the globe. He paused, his dark eyes sweeping the crowd, lingering on Amar with a pride that felt like a secret shared. It is my privilege to introduce the founder of Empower Ed, the global education initiative, Amara Johnson. A collective gasp ripped through the ballroom. Heads snapped toward Amara, her crimson silhouette, now the epicenter of every gaze. She stepped forward, her heels clicking with purpose, her curls framing a face alight with grace and power. The crowd erupted in applause, some rising to their feet, and their claps, a thunderous affirmation of her worth. Amomara's smile was radiant, her mahogany skin glowing as if lit from within, her presence a rebuke to every slur Marcus had hurled. She was no housewife, no frumpy shadow. She was a titan. Her legacy etched in schools from Nairobi to the Mississippi Delta. Marcus's glass slipped from his hand, shattering on the marble floor. The sound, a brittle echo of his breaking world. His fair skin drained to ash. His blue eyes wide with a horror that bordered on betrayal. Amara, he choked, the word barely, a whisper. His tailored suit, now a cage around his trembling frame. His mind reeled, grasping at fragments of their life. Her late-night calls, her charity work. He dismissed his hobbies. She was this Amara, the one whose name graced headlines he'd skimmed, whose impact he'd never fathomed. His knees buckled, but Vanessa's grip steadied him, her own face pale, her green eyes darting as if searching for an escape. Derek leaned back, his mouth agape. She's that Amara, he muttered to Rachel, who nodded, her sapphire gown shimmering as she clapped, her earlier silence replaced by awe. Greg's drinks had forgotten. His eyes locked on Amara, a flicker of shame crossing his face. The colleagues, once Marcus's chorus of cruelty, now shrank under the weight of their complicity. Vanessa's smirk was gone. Her sequin dress, a mockery of her faded relevance. She stepped back, her heels clicking nervously, her role in Marcus's orbit reduced to dust. The crowd's applause swelled, a tide of admiration that lifted Amara higher. A woman in pearls stood, clapping fiercely, her companion whispering, "She's changed the world." A man in a tuxedo nodded, his voice low but fervent, and he called her nothing. Their words reached Marcus, each one a lash, but he stood frozen, his gaze locked on Amara as she ascended the stage. Dr. Evans extended a hand, his smile warm, his presence a shield against the chaos Marcus had seen. "Amara, the floor is yours," he said, his voice a quiet thunder. Amara took the podium, her hands steady, her dark eyes sweeping the room. "Education is freedom," she began, her voice clear and resonant. Each word a brick in the empire she'd built. Empowered exists to give every child that freedom, no matter where they're born. The crowd leaned in, captivated, some wiping tears, others nodding in reverence. She spoke of children in Ara learning to code, of girls in Appalachia finding their voice, her passion, a flame that lit the room. Marcus's name never crossed her, lips, but her strength was a silent indictment. Her every syllable dismantling his lies. Marcus' chest heaved, his breath shallow, his world unraveling with each word Amara spoke. He saw her now, not the woman he'd mocked, but the force he'd underestimated, the queen he'd tried to dethrone. Vanessa slipped further back, her absence unnoticed, her alliance with Marcus a sinking ship. Derek's eyes met Rachel's, a shared regret passing between them, while Greg stared at the floor, his laughter a distant sin. The crowd's applause surged again, a standing ovation that shook the chandeliers. Amara's triumph, a mirror to Marcus's ruin. Dr. Evans rejoined Amara, his hand on her shoulder, his gaze sweeping the room with quiet defiance. Marcus caught the look, a flicker of recognition dawning. Evans knew her, had always known her. The stagehand signaled the speech's end, but the crowd lingered, their applause a heartbeat that refused to fade. Amara stepped back, her crimson gown trailing, her eyes briefly meeting Marcus's, proof not with anger, but with a calm that cut deeper. The ballroom held its breath, the air electric, with a promise of reckoning. Marcus's world had cracked, and Amara, standing tall, was the fault line. The applause still echoed in Amara's ears as she stepped into the backstage shadows, the Waldorf Astoria's grandeur, giving way to a cramped maze of cables and crates. Her crimson gown trailed like a fading ember, her heart pounding not from the speech, but from the weight of what came next. The crowd's ovation had been a shield, her words on empowered a sword. But here, in the flickering half-light, she was exposed, her dark eyes adjusted to the dimness, her curls slightly loosened from the stage's heat, her mahogany skin still aglow with the fire of her triumph. She'd faced the world, but Marcus waited, a storm she could not run. He emerged from the shadows, his tailored suit rumpled, his fair skin sallow. Under the fluorescent buzz, his blue eyes, once sharp with scorn, now flickered with a desperate wounded rage. "Amara," he hissed, his voice a raw wound. "Why didn't you tell me?" He stepped closer, his hands clenching as if grasping for the control he'd lost. "All this time you've been lying, playing the pitiful housewife, while you're some global icon." His words trembled, accusation laced with disbelief. His world shattered by the woman he'd mocked. Amara stood her ground, her heels rooted to the concrete floor, her crimson silk catching a stray beam of light, hair hand steadied, the tremblegone, her dark eyes piercing his. "Lying," she said, her voice calm but edged with steel. Each word a deliberate cut. "I hid who I was, so you'd love me." "For me, Marcus, not my money, not my power, but you never saw me. You saw a punching bag, someone to tear down to feel big." Her gaze held, his unflinching. Years of silence, pain rising like a tide. "You called me fat, frumpy, worthless, and I believed you for too long." Marcus flinched, her words striking deeper than any crowd's applause. He ran a hand through his hair, his jaw tight, his voice cracking. "I didn't know, Amara. How could I? You let me think you were nothing." His desperation bordered on a plea, but it was hollow. A man clinging to a narrative where he wasn't the villain. He stepped closer, his breath ragged, his eyes searching hers for the woman he'd controlled. But that Amara was gone, replaced by a queen whose fire he'd couldn't douse. Vanessa hovered at the edge of the shadows, her sequin dress, a gaudy contrast to the raw drama, unfolding. Her green eyes widened, her earlier smirk erased by Amara's words. She clung to Marcus's arm, banking on his power. But now she saw him, small, exposed, a man undone by his own cruelty. Amara's gaze flicked to her, a brief, piercing acknowledgement that stripped Vanessa bare. You laughed with him, Umbra said, her voice low, not accusing, but stating a truth. Vanessa's lips parted, but no words came. She backed away, her heels clicking, her retreat. A silent surrender, her role in Marcus's world reduced to ash. Dr. Harold Evans appeared, his graying hair catching the dim light. His presence, a quiet thunder. He placed a hand on Amara's shoulder, his dark eyes locking onto Marcus with a glare that could shatter stone. You did well, my dear, he said, his voice warm but firm, a shield against Marcus's faltering rage. To Marcus, he added, you've said enough tonight. His tone was final. A mentor, protecting his protege, a man who'd known Amara's worth when Marcus had not. Amara's shoulders relaxed slightly. Evans's support, a lifeline, their bond, a secret Marcus could only guess at. Marcus's chest heaved, his voice rising to a strange shout. You think you can just humiliate me like this? You owe me the truth. Amara, his entitlement rung hollow, a last gasp of a man drowning in his own hubris. Amara's eyes narrowed, her voice dropping to a whisper that cut deeper than any scream. I owe you nothing. Marcus, you built this cage, and now you're trapped in it. She stepped back, her crimson gown swirling, her curls framing a face that held no mercy, only truth. Marcus opened his mouth, but the words died. His defeat. A weight he couldn't lift. Evans guided Amara toward the stage door, his hand steady, his glance back at Marcus. A warning. The backstage shadows swallowed them, leaving Marcus alone, his breath shallow, his world a rubble of his own, making. Vanessa was gone, her absence unnoticed, her laughter a distant echo, the crowd's applause filtered through the walls, a reminder of Amara's triumph. Each clap a nail in Marcus's coffin. Es sank against the crate, his suit creased, his blue eyes staring into the void where his control had once lived. Amara paused at the door, her hand on the frame, her dark eyes reflecting a flicker of pain. She'd won, but the cost lingered. Years of his jabs, her silent dreams. Yet her twins' faces flashed in her mind. Their laughter, her anchor and empowered mission burned bright. She straightened, her resolve a flame that would not falter. The gala was her turning point. But the fight wasn't over. Marcus had underestimated her. And now, in the shadows of his ruin, she was free to rise. Omena stepped into her Harlem, brownstone, the door's soft click, a barrier against the chaos she'd left behind. The gala's echoes, Marcus's rage, the crowd's applause, faded as she kicked off her heels, her crimson gown pulling around her like spilled wine. The space pulsed with color. African tapestries stretched across the walls, alive with history. Books leaned in small towers beside a rocking chair softened by years of use. On the floor, her twins' toys lay scattered like little sparks of joy, to a reminder of the life she was fighting for. Amara exhaled. Her mahogany skin still carried the warmth of stage lights, her curls loose and untamed. Out there, the world saw her as a visionary who had taken New York by storm. But here, in the quiet of her Harlem brownstone, with her children asleep upstairs. She was simply Amara, a mother piecing her heart back together. It had been weeks since the Waldorf Astoria. The city still buzzed with her name. But tonight, sunlight streamed through tall windows as she sat at her desk, laptop, open to EmpowerEd's latest report. At the board meeting, she had announced a $10 million scholarship fund. "This is for the dreamers," she had said, thinking of her twins, their laughter, her compass. Donors had leaned forward, nodding in awe. Claire had been there too, her lawyer's eyes bright with pride. Later, over coffee, she clasped Amara's hand. "You're unstoppable now, but don't bury what he did. Feel it, then let it go." Amara had nodded, her gaze drifting. Marcus's wound still lived beneath her strength, tender scars she couldn't ignore. Across the city, Marcus unraveled. His corner office, once gleaming with power, now felt like a cage. Colleagues avoided his gaze. Derek, once his closest ally, suddenly dodged meetings. At a team lunch, Marcus overheard Greg mutter, "He's toxic." No wonder Amara hid it. Even his boss, a sharp-voiced woman with silver hair, summoned him in. "Your reputation is a liability. That promotion, don't count on it." His tailored suit hung looser on him, his fair skin pallid, his blue eyes dulled. The weight of his downfall pressed heavy. Socially, he was invisible. Invitations stopped coming. His easy charm no longer mattered. The stain of his cruelty had eclipsed everything. Social media sharpened the blade. Clips of Amara's speech trended under the banner "Amara Rising." Her words on education equity spread like wildfire. "She's a queen," one post declared. Another meme showed shattered glass beside Marcus's name. When you mock a legend and lose everything, his name had become synonymous with failure. Amara saw it all in silence. She never engaged, never commented, but each post felt like another brick, stacking between her past and her future. Her phone buzzed with Marcus's desperate texts. "I didn't know who you really were. I'm sorry. Please, let's talk." She read them in the stillness of her brownstone, her children's soft breaths carrying through the baby monitor. His words were hollow. A man drowning, reaching for a rope she had cut. She never replied. Her silence was deliberate. Instead, she poured herself into her mission. EmpowerEd's inbox overflowed with offers from organizations eager to stand with her. At meetings with donors, she wore her crimson lipstick, her own quiet tribute to the gown that had marked her rebirth. Her curls framed her face boldly now. She no longer hid. One evening, Claire arrived, heels clicking on the hardwood. She settled into the couch and studied her friend. "You're thriving, Mara, but you're still carrying him." Amara sipped her tea, her eyes tracing the tapestry above the fireplace. "I know. It's not just his words. It's the years I let them shape me." Claire leaned in, her gaze fierce. "You're not that woman anymore. You're the one who shook a ballroom and changed lives." Amara smiled faintly, fire flickering in her eyes again. But the shadow lingered, something she knew she'd still have to face. Then her phone pinged with a news alert. Dr. Harold Evans had praised EmpowerEd at a conference, calling Amara a visionary. We all underestimated. She thought of him backstage that night, his hand on her shoulder, his glare silencing Marcus. Without a word, he had mentored her quietly, believing in her before she believed in herself. Now, an email from his office waited, an invitation to open a school in Nairobi. Her heart lifted, the horizon widened. With steady hands, she typed her acceptance. Her children's future guided her choice. Across town, Marcus sat alone in his apartment. The skyline glittered coldly through the glass. Vanessa was gone. Her number blocked. After one final plea, his phone was silent. He scrolled through Amara Rising, each post striking him like a whip. His reflection in the dark screen was a stranger, sallow, broken, hollowed out. He typed another message. I'm nothing without you. His hands shook. He deleted it. The gala had once been his stage, but Amara had claimed it, and the world had chosen her instead. Amara stood at her window, Harlem pulsing beneath hair. Her brownstone was her sanctuary. Her children, her strength. Marcus's cruelty had cracked her open, but through those cracks, she had grown fiercer. Freer, whole, on her desk, the Nairobi invitation glowed like a ticket to a future she would shape. She wasn't finished healing, but she was finished hiding. The city glittered beyond the glass, waiting. And Amara, reborn in fire, was ready to step forward and paint her next chapter. The space pulsed with color. African tapestry stretched across the walls, alive with history. Books leaned in small towers beside a rocking chair softened by years of use. On the floor, her twins' toys lay scattered like little sparks of joy, a reminder of the life she was fighting for. Amara exhaled. Her mahogany skin still carried the warmth of stage lights. Her curls, loose and untamed. Out there, the world saw her as a visionary who had taken New York by storm. But here, in the quiet of her Harlem brownstone, with her children asleep upstairs, she was simply Amara, a mother piecing her heart back together. It had been weeks since the Waldorf Astoria. The city still buzzed with her name, but tonight, sunlight streamed through tall windows as she sat at her desk, laptop open to Empower Ed's latest report. At the board meeting, she had announced a $10 million scholarship fund. This is for the dreamers, she had said, thinking of her twins, their laughter, her compass. Donors had leaned forward, nodding in awe. Claire had been there too, her lawyer's eyes bright with pride. Later, over coffee, she clasped Amara's hand. You're unstoppable now, but don't bury what he did. Feel it, then let it go. Amara had nodded, her gaze drifting. Marcus's wounds still lived beneath her strength, tender scars she couldn't ignore. Across the city, Marcus unraveled. His corner office, once gleaming with power, now felt like a cage. Colleagues avoided his gaze. Derek, once his closest ally, suddenly dodged meetings. At a team lunch, Marcus overheard Greg mutter, "He's toxic." No wonder Amara hid it. Even his boss, a sharp-voiced woman with silver hair, summoned him in. Your reputation is a liability. That promotion? Don't count on it. His tailored suits hung looser on him. His fair skin pale. His blue eyes dulled. The weight of his downfall pressed heavy. Socially, he was invisible. Invitations stopped coming. His easy charm no longer mattered. The stain of his cruelty had eclipsed everything. Social media sharpened the blade. Clips of Amara's speech trended under the banner Amara Rising. Her words on education equity spread like wildfire. She's a queen. One post declared. Another meme showed shattered glass beside Marcus's name. When you mock a legend and lose everything, his name had become synonymous with failure. Amara saw it all in silence. She never engaged, never commented, but each post felt like another brick, stacking between her past and her future. Her phone buzzed with Marcus's desperate texts. I didn't know who you really were. I'm sorry. Please, let's talk. She read them in the stillness of her brownstone, her children's soft breaths carrying through the baby monitor. His words were hollow. A man drowning, reaching for a rope she had cut. She never replied. Her silence was deliberate. Instead, she poured herself into her mission. Empower Ed's inbox overflowed with offers from organizations eager to stand with her. At meetings with donors, she wore her crimson lipstick, her own quiet tribute to the gown that had marked her rebirth. Her curls framed her face boldly. Now, she no longer hid. One evening, Claire arrived, heels clicking on the hardwood. She settled into the couch and studied her friend. "You're thriving, Mara, but you're still carrying him." Amara sipped her tea, her eyes tracing the tapestry above the fireplace. "I know. It's not just his words. It's the years I let them shape me." Claire leaned in, her gaze fierce. "You're not that woman anymore. You're the one who shook a ballroom and changed lives." Amara smiled faintly, fire flickering in her eyes again. But the shadow lingered, something she knew she'd still have to face. Then, her phone pinged with a news alert. Dr. Harold Evans had praised EmpowerEd at a conference, calling Amara a visionary we all underestimated. She thought of him backstage that night, his hand on her shoulder, his glare silencing Marcos without a word. He had mentored her quietly, believing in her before she believed in herself. Now, an email from his office waited. An invitation to open a school in Nairobi. Her heart lifted. The horizon widened. With steady hands, she typed her acceptance. Her children's future guided her choice. Across town, Marcus sat alone in his apartment. The skyline glittered coldly through the glass. Vanessa was gone, her number blocked after one final plea. His phone was silent. He scrolled through Amara Rising, each post striking him like a whip. His reflection in the dark screen was a stranger sallow, broken, hollowed out. He typed another message. "I'm nothing without you." His hands shook. He deleted it. The Gala had once been his stage, but Amara had claimed it, and the world had chosen her instead. Amara stood at her window, Harlem pulsing beneath her. Her brownstone was her sanctuary, her children, her strength. Marcus's cruelty had cracked her open, but through those cracks, she had grown fiercer, freer. The hole on her desk, the Nairobi invitation glowed like a ticket to a future she would shape. She wasn't finished healing, but she was finished hiding. The city glittered beyond the glass, waiting, and Amara, reborn in fire, they was ready to step forward and paint her next chapter. The Nairobi sun poured gold across the sky, draping Amara in a light that seemed to bless her very presence. She stood at the podium, her crimson dress, a radiant echo of the gown that had electrified the Waldorf Astoria 6 months earlier. Behind her, the new EmpowerEd school pulsed with life. Children's laughter carried across the grounds, mingling with the rhythm of Kenyan drums. Their colorful uniforms painted the field like a patchwork of hope, each stitch a promise of possibility. Her twins played nearby, curls bouncing as they chased the ball, their giggles piercing the air like music. Amara's heart expanded at the sight, her children running freely, their joy, her truest measure of success. She gripped the microphone, her dark eyes sweeping the crowd. Parents, teachers, students, local leaders, all gathered under the warmth of the African sun. Her voice carried steady, rich, with conviction. "This school is a promise," she said, every word deliberate, every syllable an anchor. A promise that no matter where a child is born, no matter their circumstances, they deserve to dream, to learn, to soar. Applause erupted, the clapping rolling like thunder. Some waved handmade signs bearing the EmpowerEd logo. In the front row, a girl in a bright headscarf hugged a new textbook to her chest, her eyes shining with the future Amara had fought to create. The air itself seemed alive with possibility. Dr. Harold Evans stood at her side, his graying hair catching sunlight, his tailored suit sharp yet softened by his smile. He leaned toward her as the cheers washed over them. "You've outdone us all, Amara." His deep voice carried warmth, a mentor's pride. His hand rested briefly on her shoulder. Steady, and grounding. Amara met his gaze. Gratitude glimmering in her eyes. He had seen her when Marcus tried to bury her light. He had believed in her when she doubted herself. Their bond needed no words. A vow forged in resilience. When she cut the ribbon, the roar of the crowd was his pride made manifest. He had been her anchor. Now he witnessed her dawn. Her heart swelled, but a quiet ache lingered. That very morning, she had opened a letter, Marcus's handwriting shaky, ink smudged. "I'm nothing without you." It read, a pathetic plea from a man who had once thrived on control. She read it alone in her hotel room. Her twins, asleep. The Nairobi skyline glittering outside the window. She had whispered into the silence, "You were nothing with me." Her voice steady. Her crimson lipstick a mark of defiance. She hadn't burned the letter, hadn't torn it apart. She simply set it aside, a relic of a past that no longer defined her. Marcus's fall was complete. New York had forgotten him. His corner office reassigned, his name erased from guest lists. The social world that once revolved around him spun on without pause. Even social media, once his torment, had moved forward, no longer wasting energy on his downfall. He had become a ghost, a man hollowed out, pale skin and empty blue eyes staring at the ruins of his own making. One late call, his voice slurred, had been his last attempt. Amara changed her number the next day. His letter, unacknowledged, was his final plea. Her silence, his eternal sentence. Amara stepped down from the podium, her twins rushing to her side. Their small hands tugged at her dress, pulling her to the ground where she knelt, laughing with them. "Mama, it's so big," her daughter squealed, pointing at the bright walls of the school. Amara kissed her forehead, gathered her son into her arms. Their laughter drowned out the last echo of Marcus's shadow. Around them, the crowd dispersed. Some approached to shake her hand. Others lifted cameras, snapping photos already destined for headlines. Philanthropist redefines leadership. One outlet would call her, by evening, Empower Ed. Now stretched across 20 countries, her vision, once fragile and secret, had become a global force. Evans joined her again, his smile deepening, his eyes crinkled with joy. He leaned close. "You're not just a visionary, Amara. You're a force." She nodded, curls catching the Nairobi breeze. "I learned from the best." Her words carried weight, a bridge of gratitude spanning all the nights he had believed in her when she couldn't believe in herself. She walked the school grounds, her twins running ahead, their laughter mingling with the sounds of drums and cheers. The Nairobi sun dipped lower, painting the sky in shades of amber. The Gala had been her turning point, a night that had cracked her wide open and set her free. Marcus's cruelty had wounded her, but from those wounds, she had grown unbreakable. Stronger, whole. She thought of Claire that morning, her friend's message lighting up her phone. "You're a damn legend. Mara, keep shining." Amara smiled, heartful. Her scars were no longer marks of pain, but maps of strength. The horizon stretched wide before her, limitless. Her twins darted ahead, their joy, a melody that carried her forward. The school's bright walls gleamed behind her, a testament carved from her will. She paused for a moment, crimson dress vivid against the green, her silhouette strong, untamed. She was no longer the woman who trembled under Marcus's words, no longer the hidden force. She was Amara Johnson, mother, visionary, leader, queen, a woman whose fire lit paths for others to rise. The Nairobi sunset. She walked on, steady and sure. Her legacy, burning bright, a beacon for all who dared to dream.